Good evening, everyone, or given the topic of tonight, should I be saying to you all, Assalamu alaikum. Today, we dive into the issue of why Sharia banking is becoming ever so popular with non-Muslim savers. Yes, that's true. And investors, especially since the global financial meltdown of 2008. Hi, Nana, how are you?
Salam everyone, and inshallah. Tans will be explaining first what Sharia banking really is and how it works. What are its strict lending principles and why banks like Al Ryan Bank, Britain's biggest Sharia-compliant retail bank, says its own statistics prove that 1 in 3 of its customers is non-Muslim. And the bank says this figure is up from 1 in 8 non-Muslim customers in 2010.
Yes, Nana. We will explain tonight why Reuters, the worldwide financial news agency, reports that Singapore's third largest lender, SABC, says that Sharia finance now transcends religious beliefs, and that on the back of this development and its Sharia finance division and a blend of Islamic economics and modern lending principles, SABC is creaming it and gaining more market share.
But there's no way of explaining Sharia finance and Islamic economics without explaining the philosophy behind it. Or should I just say the theology or religious beliefs underpinning it?
Well, Nana, a bank that prohibits the paying of interest might seem like an unlikely choice for savers, but it isn't so. The practice is banned under Sharia. Instead, Islamic banks invest deposits and return a cut of the profits, which amounts to much the same thing as far as some savers are concerned. Now, Nana, while there are many Islamic theological schools of interpretation of various aqidah or creeds of belief, all are united around the issue of interest and Sharia finance, as united as the prohibitions against alcohol and gambling, for example.
Tans, I understand that all forms of interest or riba are just straight haram.
Yes, Nana. Hold that thought, though, for now. We will unpack more with our guests after this short break, so please stay with us. Now, welcome back. Economics has long been studied by various economics and Islamic scholars and intellectuals, even in antiquity. Dating back many centuries, they have pondered the issue of interest and, in fact, the morality of charging interest. The debate also took place in Christianity. You'll remember that Christ brought out a whip and he whipped the moneylenders out of the temple. In Islam, a gradual process of eliminating all forms of interest was evolved until there were many complex financial products and instruments that married both modern monetary skills with Islamic law, and a comprehensive Islamic economic system was evolved. To discuss Sharia banking, I am now joined by the head of ABSA's Islamic Banking Division, Riaz Lahman, Mohammed Zakaria, who is a Sharia advisor at ABSA, and Muhammad Amin Hassan, head of Sharia banking at Standard Bank. Welcome, gentlemen. You're all very welcome to the SABC.
Thank you.
Now, can you explain to me what the theological and belief systems are that underpin Sharia banking principles?
Thanks, Tandeka. I think you gave a beautiful introduction in terms of the economic studies that's been going on for millennia now. And in economic terms, I think the easiest way to describe it is Sharia economic system does not recognize money as an asset, whereas conventional economics sees it as an asset. And so where in a conventional universe, money is given out and is charged for the use of that money, Sharia economic system does not see money as an asset, and so it isn't given out and charged for the use of money.
So are you saying that in Sharia, money is not a commodity to be traded
Yes.
and made profit off, but it is a system of exchange of value, rather.
Absolutely. So conventional economics would define money as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. Sharia economics does not recognize it as a store of value. It's currency. So it's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, but value is not intrinsic in money. It's fungible, according to economics, Sharia economics at least.
That is so interesting. In a world that is highly financialized, that means that we view money as just another commodity, and financialization has increased inequality. I understand that Sharia has got very firm principles about the elimination of poverty. Can you talk to me a bit about that?
So the Sharia economic system is almost a hybrid between your pure capitalist system and your communist system or your socialist system. And what it aims to achieve is, instead of creating absolute equality within a socialist type system or absolute pyramid type structures within a capitalist universe, it aims to seek to achieve an equitable distribution of wealth, where an absolute right over the factors of production is not an absolute right, but rather those who have actively participated in that factor of production then derive benefit that factor
So
achieves.
it ties benefit to actual productivity and
Absolutely.
involvement. So it ties reward to hard work.
Absolutely.
Can you weigh in, please, sir?
Sure. So going back to the concept of money, it is a mechanism to acquire assets, underlying assets, and that's one of the fundamental principles of Sharia banking, or Sharia, the Islamic value financial system. There's the element of risk, where risk has to be assumed in order to earn a
I
return.
understand it has to be shared. There's an insistence and a principle that you share all loss and you share the upside too. What does that mean? Can you break
What
it
that
down?
means is that there will be no returns, or you cannot expect a return without putting your capital at risk. It's a very important concept when you look at it in terms of the global the global issues that we've seen since 2008, where a lot of exposure was to synthetic instruments without underlying value. It's interesting because, in fact, in 2015, Christine Lagarde, who was the chairperson of the IMF at that point, made specific reference to Islamic banking. And the implications that Islamic banking would have had if that methodology was adopted at that point in time. The Islamic banking system exposes the providers of capital to an element of risk, so that provides the financial system with a risk buffer. Also, the system ensures that there's underlying assets, hence your loans are collateralized through
Hence,
that process.
its popularity now after the 2008 global financial meltdown. Can you explain to our viewers why these products that are Sharia compliant are ever so popular now? They're seen as safer than the sort of like mortgages and so on that happened before the global financial crisis.
Sure. So in terms of the, as I explained, the exposure of or the capital that is being provided, having that underlying asset, there's always an asset in relation to the capital that is provided. That provides the financial system with something tangible, something that is collateralized. In the event of, for example, your subprime crisis, where collateral was taken on the perceived future value. This is speculative in nature, and that's one of the things that is prohibited in terms of Sharia, wild speculation in terms of potential increases in home loan
So
prices.
there's less likelihood of having a bubble.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's from the broader financial services perspective. When you look at it at an individual level, you know, there's sometimes a common misconception that a Sharia product, a lending product, is more expensive, or that if you're investing in a Sharia product, that the returns are not as good as a conventional type of product, and that's just a myth. If you go and look around, the returns are on par, and sometimes even better.
I read read a figure somewhere in preparation for chatting to you gentlemen that it accounts, Sharia banking accounts now for about 1% of global assets, and it's driven a lot by the Middle Eastern states.
Correct.
Can you tell us a bit more about this development?
Sure. Globally, that statistic is correct, and I think there's lots of research that's been done in terms of the value that's been added by the Sharia banking or Islamic finance industry. The global average ranges and vacillates between 1 and 2% of total banking assets or total financial assets, predominantly, as you rightfully mentioned, concentrated within the GCC region as well as Southeast Asia, the likes of your Malaysia, Singapore, which are really mature markets, 500 million Muslims concentrated within that particular geography, which is the primary consumers of the proposition.
And good economies in those
Excellent
areas.
economies. We know that some of the Middle Eastern economies historically over the past few years have seen that were exposed to the oil price and the drop in oil price over the past few years.
And with those staggering amounts pooled in their sovereign wealth funds.
Absolutely. So these economies, as the oil price is now starting to stabilize, you see that these economies starting to get out and growth starting to tick up again. So we're hoping to see a significant increase in the adoption of Islamic finance products. And obviously from the fund management side or the asset management side, the drop in oil price certainly reduced the value of the assets that were held in these funds. So as these prices start ticking up, commodity prices overall globally start ticking up, we hope to see that 1 percentage point increase to the upper end, closer to the 2%.
Interesting. Mohammed, sir, could you talk to us about the theology and the morality underpinning Sharia banking?
Okay, so Sharia banking or Islamic banking involves adhering to certain principles of Islamic law. And this includes, for example, staying away, abstaining from interest, gharar, which is uncertainty, and speculation, and investing in certain industries. So if you look at one, like for example, interest, if the bank, if a person, in a conventional sense, a person has his funds in the account, he earns interest, he gains interest. But in Islamic banking, what happens is that the client would put his funds in the account, and the bank would then use that funds in Sharia compliant activities. So sometimes there's this misconception also, where a person would say that I will earn interest and I will give my interest away. I will just, give it away and do away with it. But then the realization is not there, where a customer actually signs the contract on a conventional basis, that he allows the bank to use the funds in non-Sharia compliant activities.
Oh.
So that is also another difference when we look at Islamic
So, for
banking.
example, a Sharia compliant activity would not be a bottle store, most definitely
That's
not.
correct, yes.
Or it wouldn't be a gambling outfit.
That's correct. So we ensure that the funds are ring-fenced and they are used in a Sharia compliant manner.
Now, can you tell me what is so wrong with interests theologically?
Okay, interest, it's mentioned in the Quran, which is a primary source for Islamic principles, that interest is forbidden, and it is also mentioned that that person that involves himself in interest actually wages war with the Almighty. So these are very stern commands, etc., to a person involved in interest. That's why we try and stay away as best away from interest.
Now, normally when there is a strict religious commandment to abstain from a particular practice, there is normally a philosophical logic that underpins it. What is that?
Absolutely. So the philosophy behind that in the Quran as well is a beautiful verse where God Almighty says, "La tadlimun wa la tudlamun." Do not dispense prejudice, neither allow prejudice to be done to you. And so this theory underpins the concept of interest from an economic philosophy in Islam, where in a conventional loan transaction, some party is prejudiced. If the borrower is borrowing on interest, he's prejudiced because he has to pay more than he originally borrowed. And if the lender does not charge interest based on the deflationary value of money in today's circumstance, then he is prejudiced because he's lost purchasing power over a period of time.
Wow, that is such an
So
amazing
this is
explanation.
the philosophy behind why interest is prohibited, because in either side of the transaction there is potential for prejudice to be effected from either the borrower or the lender side.
Now, I also understand that there is a correlation linguistically with the Arabic word for interest with excess, and the emphasis in Islamic thought on the purity of modesty. So if yield is equal to excess or addiction or too much, or it goes against the principles of modesty, how are these related to the prohibition?
So there is a general principle within the House of Islam that is on this concept of modesty and balance, where God Almighty promotes and suggests that as human beings we should practice what is known as wasatiyya, the balanced lifestyle. Excess is not permissible, neither is hoardiness. We need to ensure that the wealth that we have derived by the blessings of God Almighty is spent justly and equitably distributed to our families and those in need, but also not in excess or in exaggeration, over leveraging your personal balance sheet to spend on consumption and unnecessary items. And there is a verse in the Quran where God Almighty likens the excessive spenders to those that are the brothers of the devil, because it is something that is disliked to be excessive and boastful about the wealth that God Almighty has given to you. So this interest and balance falls under this whole category of living a balanced lifestyle, not in extremes in either scenario.
Now, you are modern bankers, and it's a very sophisticated industry. And how do you make up for, substitute for the absence of interest in the financial instruments that you use? I understand that very sophisticated financial products have been evolved to make up for this. Can you tell us more?
No, so there is no prohibition in terms of earning a return. Okay, that's not a concept that is prevalent within the Islamic banking. However, the way in which you earn the return has to be acceptable from a Sharia perspective. So earning a profit where you take risk on your capital, that is acceptable. Participating in a share of a business, that is acceptable.
Now, this form of banking has become very popular to non-Islamic adherents. What benefit has it got for me if I were to go and go to my bank and ask to see the Sharia department? What slew of instruments would you lay on the table for me, a non-adherent?
Okay, firstly, I think why would a non-adherent, maybe choose Islamic banking? The reason could be because, like I mentioned earlier, they don't want to involve themselves in these sin industries, gambling and all those things. So that could be the reason. The types of products that the banks would have or can offer, same like similar to conventional, would be like vehicle finance, trade finance, and your investment options. All those type of products are available at Islamic banking.
Will it take me longer to pay off my Sharia vehicle than
No.
any other?
It would be the same. So what would be different is, let me explain how it works, is that from an Islamic perspective, for example, vehicle finance, we would purchase the vehicle, the Islamic bank would purchase the vehicle and then lease it to the client over the term. So it could be also 6 years, it could be 7 years. The last payment would be the payment, the purchase of the vehicle, and then the client would take possession of the vehicle. So the important consideration here is that the bank first has to take ownership of that vehicle or the asset before it leases it or sell it to the client. And then also the contracts are also important. The leasing, all those are very important in an Islamic perspective.
So I'll lease the car from you, the bank, and how long will it typically take me to pay it off?
It will be similar to the conventional. You can choose If you want over 3 years, if you want over 6 years, you can choose. So that would be similar. What also nowadays banks are offering is the fixed rate and the variable rate. So previously there was this misconception that Islamic banking, is more expensive. That could be those days where, it wasn't so developed as yet.
It was so boutique then.
Yes, and it was only the fixed, rate. But now as development has taken place, now the sophistication has come in where we can offer variable rate, but also within the ambits of Sharia.
Okay.
And that's why we can also compete with the conventional pricing.
Excite me in one of the investment opportunities.
There's
Typically.
numerous available. So as depending on what your risk profile is, as a client, there's no financial advice at all. If you've got cash instruments, you've got your unit trust universe, you've got your long-term insurance type products within your retirement annuities. And as Muhammad and Riaz have mentioned, the past 15 years within the South African landscape, especially, we've seen a rapid maturation of the industry where you have all your conventional iterations into Sharia compliance. So you've got cash deposits, call, demand and term. You've got all your array of unit trust funds, balance funds, income funds, high equity funds, low risk funds, and you've got your retirement saving products, your living annuities, your insurance products for short term as well. So depending on what your financial need is, whatever your financial savings or investment goals are, you can slot into a myriad of products that is now available within the landscape. And those products, as Riaz mentioned earlier on, now are really competitive in terms of yield and are on par with the conventional universe as well. So there would be no disparity from a consumption perspective, and the client wouldn't be prejudiced.
Now, I know it's forbidden and a bit haram to play with money, right? But can I keep money in a foreign currency with an Islamic bank? And then when the exchange rate falls in our favor, translate that into more rand, or is that considered wrong?
Speculation. If you're speculating with your money, it is not acceptable. I stand to be corrected, but my view is that speculation is not acceptable.
So I think it's to add to what Riaz mentioned, in a universe today where you are operate within a globalized economy, and every sector is open up to foreign currency risk. We're fortunate that we now have foreign exchange products that allows you to hedge your currency risk out in a Sharia compliant way. So you now have products like Sharia compliant forward exchange contracts that are available. So especially our business universe that are importers or exporters, they need to have certainty of their pricing to their value chain, their debtors and customers.
To hedge against exchanges.
To hedge against that currency risk, you now have products. And again, it's emblematic of how the industry has been maturing over the past decade. So you now can hedge out your currency risk as well in a Sharia compliant way as well.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. I could go on and talk about this for ages. Unfortunately, we only had the minutes given to us. Now, Nana, please weigh in on this.
It seems to me, Tans, that Islamic finance is deeply concerned about the nature of money, and it sees it not as a commodity to be treated for interest, but rather as merely a means of exchanging value.
Yes, Nana, I also learned that it is a system of ethics that are severely challenged in this era of hyper-financialization. But lo and behold, it is fighting fit and commands 1% of global assets and concerns itself with the need to eliminate strife, hunger, and poverty. Assalamu alaikum, shukran, and good night.